Oscar was also emceeing in the other room. So he had to introduce his speaker, and now he's running over here to do his speech, and he's got to run back over there and finish everything off, right? So we're not going to waste any time. The man with the hat, Oscar Clark, formerly of Papaya Mobile, now with EveryPlay. Take it away.
Thanks, Dave. So, yes, without further ado, sorry about my tardiness. It was literally running from one room to the other, introducing the other speaker. I want to tell you about the zombie apocalypse. And to just explain what I mean by this is, how many of you are making premium games? Yeah, hands up, yeah? You're making premium games? You're zombies. You're the living dead. You're dead, you just don't know it yet. But I'm gonna just extend my usual line on this, because it's more than that. How many of you are making copycat freemium games? Anyone who's making a copycat freemium game? You're also a zombie. You're also the living dead. Because we have to be smarter, and we have to make better games that people will love. Freemium will unlock a whole bunch of things for us to make better games. But today's not going to be talking about that in detail. That's my other presentation. I did that here 3 weeks ago. Today is a different presentation. This is about, in this world of the zombie, in this world of people having to pay their way to buy customers because they haven't made games that retain users, in this world, what do we do, us poor survivors of this zombie apocalypse? How do we find love? How do we find those people who are going to want to buy our game content? Not our game content. So, what we're going to try and do is go through that step by step, he says, wanting the slides to move forward. That's interesting. My slides aren't moving forward. Let's try this. What appears on this screen isn't what you're seeing there, interestingly. Now will work. Yes, the pictures are loading, so it will take a little while. You'll probably notice a theme from my presentation as we go through, if it works. This is changing, but the big screen isn't changing, which is very odd. So maybe I'm the zombie. So you can see that's changing. But, oh, we're there. Excellent. So, first thing, for all of you love-seeking survivors who want to find customers, who want to love your game, have no fear, there is someone out there. First one to tell me how many zombies there are in the picture and puts their hand up, I will congratulate and buy a beer later. Can you see any zombies? How many? No? Sorry? 4. There are 4 zombies. Other side of the tree. So, we've got to know where our audiences are. We have to understand what they're doing when they're not playing our game. We have to understand what they're interested in. And not just our customers, where are our partners, where are the organizations we can work with to make this stuff work. We've got to stop thinking in isolation and start working together. Ooh, wrong button. Ooh. Lesson 2. How are we going to stand out? That's my wife, by the way. How are we going to stand out from the hundreds of apps that are launched every single day? That's why we're talking about these clones. Forgive me, but there are a lot of people doing copycat games because it's easy to explain. If we don't differentiate when we're one of 100 apps that day, and actually when it got closer to Christmas last year, it was closer to 900 apps in a day. You can't just make the same old stuff. And the other reason you can't just make the same old stuff is because customers have played it. They'll get bored quickly. And they're coming to you to be entertained. They're coming to you because they want to trust you before they will part with their money. How are you going to build their trust if you don't stand out and grab their attention? You have to understand what those players want. You have to understand how you're going to provide them with fantastic entertainment that's going to enchant and delight them. And that's going to be your primary focus before you can even start thinking about marketing. You've also got to think how that audience is going to share it. Well, why do I say that? Okay, I know I'm working for Amplify now. I'm not working for Papaya anymore. But there's still the same premise counts. If I don't create meaningful moments that I share with other people, why would I get my friends to play this game? And it is still the case that over 50% of the plays, or the new acquisitions of games, come from people looking over the shoulder at their friend, looking at the game. I can't remember the quote for that, but it's an eBar survey. Anyway, so we need to think much smarter on how we make people enchanted enough to tell other people, first and foremost. It's no good just thinking, I'll chuck an ad out, the ad will be good, therefore they'll buy the game. If the game itself isn't good, you're wasting your money. A little bit of makeup helps. We have to present ourselves in the best possible light. We have to make people delighted. I used to run I'd like to think the most successful in Europe, possibly by head of population, or head of users, possibly one of the most successful in the world. When I was at 3, we did 68% of the UK downloads and plays. We did 45% of the revenue for an operator that had only 5% of the audience. So I kind of know my stuff when it comes to selling games. And what worked every time was this game immediately obvious? Was it immediately understandable? Was it relevant? And was it gorgeous? And if we don't make our products work like that, we're not going to attract that audience. So it doesn't matter when we get to the point where we're going to advertise. If we haven't created a context, if we haven't created delight, we're not going to be successful. Let's not be sleazy. If we take dodgy shortcuts, if we use bots, if we do, pay for customers, we get found out eventually. And what happens is the damage it does to the brand in a free-to-play game is so importantly bad because you're just capping the lifetime value. And what freemium does, and what freemium is so important about, is not just attract the audience to play, but we've got to keep them. We've got to maintain and build lifetime value. So when we're designing our game, when we're thinking about how we're going to promote our game, we have to do it as an honest broker, because trust is an important part of this. So let's not take dodgy shortcuts. It always costs you more in the end. We also have to use every means of communication available to us. We have to know where our customer is, what they're doing. Cross-promotion is a fantastic way to do this because we can look at the way that other people are already playing games like ours, hopefully not a clone, or have similar interests. But maybe we've got to stop looking at the App Store as the main entrance to the game. There are great techniques to take the user from a web link directly to the store. So why do we focus so much on that ranking and all those things? We might be able to get some leeway, and those people who spend the time to get to know those partners, to get to know Apple, to get to know Google, and get that working, will do great. But not everybody can do that. Apple can't cope with the number of people who want to get their game featured. So instead, let's stop relying on them, and let's start relying on ourselves, and look where our audience is, and how do we communicate to them. Is there a motor racing magazine or website or something, or a motor racing club that we can focus on to talk about our racing game? Are there martial arts clubs that we can talk to if we have a combat game? I'm not necessarily saying that's the right act, but are there some other things? I mean, what are the things that your user is already doing when they're not playing a game? And let's look at how we can advertise there, how we can promote there, how we can build PR stories there, not just trying to always buy from the same place everybody else is, because that gets expensive. Remember, there's hundreds of apps every day. Those same hundreds of apps every day are trying to buy more advertising space. Therefore, the price is going to go up. The cost of acquisition goes up. And you see stats from Fixu saying $1.81 to buy a customer, a loyal customer being returns 3 times. You're not going to get your revenue back if you have to rely on a user that's only going to come back 3 times in freemium. So let's look at where we can use every single option available to us, the YouTube clip, the tweet deck. But we have to build a conversation about who we are and stand up for that brand value. Being free is not enough anymore. Everybody's free. Look at the top grossing charts. It's virtually all, maybe 2 or 3 in the top 25 are still paid for. Very few, the top games are free. But we don't have to be in the top 25. Something like 70% of the revenue for games comes outside the top 100 games, according to Flurry. So there's a lot of revenue outside the top charts. So we can look elsewhere. But what's going to motivate the player to download my game, not your game? What's going to motivate them to download my game, not go and look at that video trailer? What's going to incentivize that player? How are you going to grab their attention and make them want to do it. Incentivized download is quite a good way to do this. It's not the only way. I think we just have to be smarter about what we're doing. We have to get a second date. It's no good just getting someone to install our app. It's great that they do, but we have to get them to play again. And it's very difficult to get someone to press an icon twice. Something like 65% of the icons on people's phones don't get pressed twice. So, something like 65% don't get pressed twice. And also bear in mind, again, a flurry stat, this one, 85 apps are downloaded on average per person on their device. 5 to 10 apps are used every week. So you can't just rely on people re-clicking your icon. If they don't come back to it, you're dead in the water. And of course, you've got to make sure it's simple and easily communicated, that the icon does what it says on the tin, that it works. But actually, why don't we create some appointments in gameplay? Come back in 10 minutes and you'll get this. It's going to take you 3 minutes for this thing to build. These kind of harvesting kind of mechanics that have been used in farming games are incredibly powerful to drive a systematic repeat return to an experience. And I'm arguing that this is actually part of the marketing plan as well, because we've got to think about the end-to-end user experience. We have to think, why is someone going to play our game again and again and again and again and again? If we don't get a second date, we don't go any further, because we want to seal the deal. Why should that player commit to us to start spending money in our game if we haven't got them to think about playing with us on a repeated basis? We have to build trust, which takes us back to the messages that we send out in every piece of communication. So we have to think about the game as an integral part of the marketing proposition. If we don't deserve the trust, why will people spend money with us? It also means we've got to be a bit careful. Imagine going on the first date and asking the prospective girlfriend to change her Facebook status on the first date. That's not good. That's not a good thing. But we do it all the time. In our attempts to thrive towards virality in the game, we push too hard. We don't work out the engagement level of the player. And we need to spend time thinking about that carefully and look at it not just in terms of the click-throughs and the access, but also in terms of the lifetime value of the user. We also don't want to start people spending money up front too soon. We don't want to create paywalls that prevent them from continuing. I've seen some great games, where they've just put in download a level, and what happens is people play through the free levels to get to the paid level and stop. That's terrible. The one thing I think Angry Birds got best right, that's in my personal opinion, is realizing that level delivery was a retention strategy, and it was also a marketing communication strategy. Because if you knew this is a game where you're going to constantly get new levels provided to you, that's quite a draw for me as a player, but also for my friends to come and play this game. It's telling me there's something more that I can get from the experience. So let's not push too soon. And let's have some constant vigilance. Let's look at what the trends are out there in the marketplace. What's the new games that are coming out? Is the message that we're saying about the story of our game really working? Are players aware of what we're doing and the deals that we can offer them? Do they understand the value in spending money? Do they understand the value of sharing the game experience with other people? We have to keep evolving continuously, because freemium only lasts as long as the player is happy to play. We have to think about every moment about why they're going to replay, not just why they're going to download. And that means we need to create meaningful moments of absolute joy that can be shared. And I think this is the crux of it. So whilst it is true that you can spend money to buy customers for the short term, I would argue we need to make sure that the game becomes the vehicle for our marketing communications. The game itself is the method where we can show the joy and delight that can be achieved by playing. And then let's use that as a way to create new virality, to create messages where we can evangelize in front of where our audiences are. If they're reading, say, a game review, they're probably a hardcore player. That's great if your audience is a hardcore player. It's also great when your non-hardcore player needs an advocate voice. So we need to look at every point. Where the friend can be an advocate, they're still part of our audience. Where the player is not a hardcore player, where are they? Who do they listen to? What are they interested in? If we don't understand our players and use that properly, we can't then share the meaningful joy. We won't get the audience. That's interesting. The happily ever after slide has missed its line. What I was saying here really was that actually we have a long-term relationship we want to maintain. And there is no such thing as a happily ever after. It takes dedication and work and effort to maintain a conversation with not only the people who are playing, but the people who could be playing, and making them feel confident and be able to see and access. You have to have the reach that then drives people to want to come back to your game, and you also have to provide a continuous, ongoing delivery of experience. We have to stop thinking like products that are released and forgotten about, and we have to focus on services which are maintained and managed over time. And our communication to our audience has to have the same attitude. It's not just about getting a burst email out or a burst ad campaign. It's about maintaining a persistent relationship. Bursts are useful because the burst is all about getting that notice at the beginning. But actually, what this all comes down to is love. Love for your game. If you don't have a love for your game, how on earth can you expect your audience to have that? And if you do have that love, you've got to communicate that with the audiences that you know could be attracted to it. And that love and that interest and that desire and that passion will come across to that audience and help you create a context within which all of the classical techniques of promotion will work. Without that context, without that love, you won't be successful. That's basically it. Just a bit of, like a word from my sponsor. I'm the evangelist for EveryPlay, which is an Amplifier product. We're basically creating an SDK that lets you record gameplay and the front-facing camera so you can see the players' expressions as they play. It's a completely free SDK. It's got some great opportunities to use it for creating viral promotion, sharing those magical moments I was talking about before, but also some potential really good value if you're going to be showing people, using your testers and getting your testers to show you how they play the game. So there's all sorts of stuff. I won't dwell on it. This is about finding love in the zombie apocalypse, but I have to pass that on. I have to give thanks to these guys, my friends, my family, my sister, my daughter, who all took part in the photo shoot. It was around the Olympics, hence the strange positioning. Thank you very much.
That doesn't appear to be working. There we go. Any questions for Oscar about the zombie apocalypse or about EveryPlay?
Hi, Oscar. I have the same question what I told to Rovio. How you calculate conversation for your offline activity, and what is the conversity?
So if I'll repeat the question in case I got it
buy
wrong.
money, yes.
So-
How calculate money? Как вы считаете конверсию? Не понимаю просто.
Okay, so I think you're asking how do we have a conversation when you're offline. Is that what you're asking? No? Okay. Sorry. No.
I don't think he's talking about offline actions.
Okay.
Are you talking about offline actions? How do you track the conversion of offline?
Oh, okay. How do you track the conversion of offline? That's an interesting one. Well, it's not kind of what we're doing, but I can see it's an interesting subject. I would imagine from my previous experience that what I would do is I would be recording tracking data as I was playing the game, and the game itself would buffer the activity of the player. Now, in the EveryPlay context, if I'm recording the video of that player and associating metadata into that, well, I've kind of got that covered. So if I've understood you correctly and you're about understanding how people are using that data, that's one thing. But I also wonder, maybe I've got that wrong, and you're asking about how you work out, how you track somebody who's looked at a game from a friend and then played that game. Was that the one you were after? No? I'm being rubbish here, sorry, my fault.
Actually, I can propose you one decision. For example, we are in our project in Meru. We used special numbers of free bonuses, and we calculated how many bonuses make registration in our
Yeah.
system.
Okay, so you've worked out the number of bonus points that then lead to your
Yeah.
registration. Okay. I think that sounds like a very sound approach. I suppose it's what do you want to get out of the experience? And as a developer,
I want to ask you how you calculate.
I'm not sure how I can explain that because I think we don't do that kind of thing ourselves. With the stuff that we do, we're focused on creating shared experiences. Now, if I've shown you a video and you've gone to my site that I've shared offline and you look at it and online, great, I've got data. But if I'm sat there next to you and trying to show you my game, I can't track that. So you've got to try and, basically surveying is about the best way to check. You can't do it hard and fast. Again, if I've understood the question. Cool. Yes, exactly. It's exactly like that. The only way with magazines, traditionally, the only way to know how your friend has introduced you is either have a specific campaign, which is, here's an offer code, or it's to actually do surveys. Any more questions? Sorry? Well, if you can do offer codes, they're great, but the trouble is they're clumsy, cumbersome. Maybe QR codes makes that easier. But personally, I would embed data into the experience and make it so that when someone's got a friendship relationship in the game, by socializing the game, that then gives you as much information as you probably need. Yeah.
So social marketing is more effective.
I think so. I think the socialization does that job for you better, personally.
So what would be the best way to observe users? I mean, relying on community feedback, emails we get from them, or is there any other way we can observe?
Yeah, I think there's all sorts of things you need to think about. I mean, the research is always good. And obviously, communicating with your audience is always good. So there's no harm in doing surveys, there's no harm in doing outreach. You can also incentivize that, so you can give away in-game currency or in-game activity, some bonus item for filling in forms or whatever else. But even that's a bit tricky. Fundamentally, you do get some data about the fact that what devices they're using, who they're sharing with, what sort of share relationships like, and try and use that to get some idea. You can use advertising kind of responses as well. So how they respond to a particular ad might tell you something in terms of behavioral information. But it's a tricky thing to do. Personally, the way I've done it is literally sit there and do research panels. But that's my particular approach because I'm a classical marketing guy. But there are clever ways that you can think about how people play the game to look at behavioral information and then use that behavioral information to infer other information about the player. But it's a bit tricky. Yeah. Again, surveys is the best thing to do offline, I think, but unless anyone else has a view.
I've noticed that there's a reluctance often for development teams to actually talk to their customers, whether online or offline. But I never get better information than when I sit down with a player or two once a week and just watch them play the game and talk to them about it.
And frankly, I think that's the thing is that, the more the players, let's take PlayStation Home or let's take, when I was running Wireplay back in the day, by going onto the service, in fact, even with Papaya, by going onto the service and going onto the forums and talking and asking questions in person, you get such a reputation for listening. And it's like a ripple effect. Not everybody has to see me to know I was there. And the more that you encourage that sense that, yes, there is this guy who will be there and who will ask questions, who is behaving like just another player, but is clearly marked as someone from the development team, that's incredible. And if you then use that to set up regular, we used to do with Home, we used to have special events where you would have an open session, and people would go to that open session, and the moderators would actually sit there and introduce one of the dev team, for example, and then they would talk. In home, it was a maximum of 60 people in each instance, and then they would move between instances. But it was an incredibly effective thing to do. And the effect from a PR point of view, that clearly you love the game enough to be coming into the game and talking to players, wow, that has a marketing effect of its very own. And I think it reinforces where I'm coming from with showing love, actually adoring your own game is a critical part of being successful. Okay? And it has a ripple effect. It's one of the reasons why I wear a hat when I go to these events is that it makes it very obvious who I am and my passion for the games that I'm involved with or talking about, or the services I'm talking about, comes across. And then people start listening, and then that builds a reputation, and other people become aware of that interest, and that ripples down. So it's all about passion to me.
Yeah, I thought the hat was about hair loss.
I didn't want to mention that.
Thank you very much, Oscar.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.